Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. We also have Andrew Corley from Finance and Administration and Emma Heller-Kavanagh from Legislative here with us tonight from Youth and Governance. At this time, we're going to ask if Craig Thompson, the Executive Director from Transportation Development Association of Wisconsin, if he wants to come forward and begin his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening. I know you've got a busy agenda, so I won't try to take too much of your time. But I was asked to come here and talk to you a little bit about transportation budget at the state level and sort of where we're at. I'm Craig Thompson. I'm with the Transportation Development Association. We're a statewide not-for-profit group. It's membership-based that advocates for a connected transportation system in all the modes, from our state and local roads, our bus systems, our ports, our airports, and rail. So getting sort of to the heart of the matter, there's been a lot of talk in the news lately. It's been up again about the condition of our transportation infrastructure and the condition of our fund. During the last state budget, there was really two items that held up the passage of the budget, and they were the debate over UW funding and the debate over funding for transportation. The final resolution on the transportation side was we basically decided we couldn't come to resolution, and so sort of kicked the can down the road until the next budget. And so we've been embarking on an effort along with the Counties Association, the Towns Association, the League of Municipalities, and a lot of other groups, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, some agriculture groups and others, with our Just Fix It campaign to try to see if we can't get to a point that when the next budget's introduced and debated that we reach a different outcome, because we think it's important for the economy of the state to begin to repair and get our transportation infrastructure in good shape. Just a few numbers on that. When you think about transportation, it's in Wisconsin in particular, where we are a manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture are three of our biggest industries. They're three of the most transportation-dependent industries you will find. If you look at those three industries, plus retail sales and other transportation-dependent industry, it accounts for about 1.4 million jobs in Wisconsin, with about $55 billion in wages. I don't know why I did that. Just again talking about the importance of it, of transportation nationally. There's a group called an online group called areadevelopment.com, and they're a site selection online magazine, and they do surveys every year of the top CEOs and consultants across the country, and they ask them to list their top factors for why they choose to locate a business in a given area. For the last 10 years I've been following this, the top two have remained the same. In this last one, access to highways is the #1 most important reason these folks look at it when choosing to locate a business, and #2 is availability of skilled labor. Problem is, and what has been much covered in Wisconsin as of late, we've gotten to a point where our infrastructure is in some rough shape. I'm just going to give you a couple metrics on that of some different groups that have measured that and come to that conclusion. What's up on the screen right now is a report card that the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance came out with for Wisconsin for the year 2015. On that report card, they graded Wisconsin for 23 different areas, from things ranging from poverty, high school graduation rates, venture capital, average earnings for the household, 23 different areas. The area that received the worst grade on the entire report card was the condition of our highways, where the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance said we get a D. There's been numerous other groups, I'm not going to go through all of them, that have come to similar conclusions. Very recently there was a national group called TRIP that did a study in Wisconsin that said basically 42% of our major urban roads are in mediocre to poor condition. And the American Society of Civil Engineers posts a fact sheet on the USDOT website where they rank the 50 states based on the International Roughness Index, which is the one data that the Federal Highway Administration collects for all the states. And Wisconsin ranks 48th out of the 50 states in the country in terms of the roughness. So from our standpoint, we've reached a point where we've got some troubles, and it's impacting business, commerce, and individuals in the state. So how did we get to this position where we're getting a D for our state and local roads, where we're ranking 48th out of 50? And I would say it's really the culmination of four things that have happened over the course of the last decade. The first one is something that's not unique to Wisconsin at all. Every state is dealing with, and that's the fact that we built an interstate system in the 1950s. It was built to last for 50 years, and it did. And now large segments of it need to be replaced, and that's an expense that is way above and beyond the usual cost of the maintenance of the 115,000 miles of state and local roads that we have in Wisconsin. Again, other states are grappling with the same thing, but it's a cost that's above and beyond the normal. The second is that we fund our transportation system in Wisconsin with user fees that go into a transportation fund, and basically those two user fees are a registration fee and the gas tax. Our registration fee in Wisconsin is $75 when we register our car each year. Gas tax in Wisconsin is 30.9 cents a gallon. The thing about the state gas tax and state registration fee, they've worked very well as user fees in terms of the more you use it, the more you pay, but they do not act like other taxes do that fund general government because they're not percentage based. It's a certain amount per gallon, and it's that set amount when you register your car. If you look at income tax, it's a percentage of income, so there's natural growth as incomes rise from year to year. Sales tax is 5 or 5.5% cost of goods. There's natural growth as the cost of goods go up. Property tax, obviously percentage based on equalized value of the home. So there's not the natural growth in that registration fee and gas tax as there is in the other taxes, which is why back in 1980, Wisconsin adopted gas tax indexing. And the idea was that you could make that act a little bit more like other taxes do. It was indexed to the consumer price index, so you would see a little bit uptick every year. And we had that in Wisconsin for 25 years until in 2005, for various political reasons, we got rid of gas tax indexing. The debate at that time was that it was taxation without representation because it went up automatically, and that everybody understood that it was important and costs go up and we would have to replace that or find something else or vote on it each time. But 11 years have passed and there's never been a vote on that on the floor one way or the other, and it stayed the same. So in the interim, the chart that you see up there is again from the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, and it shows kind of what's happened since then. From 2007 to 2012, despite some recessionary times and a sluggish economy, the revenue that came into the state for the income tax still went up 7%. The revenue that came into the state from the sales tax still went up 3%, but the revenue from the gas tax went down 2% during that time. So I would say that's the second item that's compounded the issue. The third is something you're all very familiar with as well, and that's that we're all, or most of us at least, are driving more fuel-efficient cars. And there's been a lot of talk about how that decreases the buying power of the gas tax and the revenue to the state on the back end, but sometimes we fail to realize it's because many of us are paying less in our state gas tax on the front end. So the example here is in 2005, the gas tax again was 30.9 cents as it is today, and if you were driving a 2005 Camry, you got about 24 miles to the gallon, and if you drove 12,000 miles in a year, which the DOT says is the average, you would have paid in that year, in 2005, you would have paid about $164.50 in your state gas tax. If in 2016, if you're driving a 2016 Camry, which gets 41 miles per gallon, and you drive that same amount, you would have paid about $96.30 in state gas tax. So when you look at that on the front end and you start compounding that, you can realize what that does to the revenue for that. And gas tax is the biggest component of the two between gas tax and registration fees that go to fund transportation in Wisconsin. And then the fourth factor that's come together with those other three, we've got the extraordinary costs of having to rebuild large segments of the interstate system. We have that the taxes don't any longer act like other taxes do, and we have the more fuel-efficient cars. And then the fourth factor is during that interim, we still moved forward and continued to build projects across the state. Things didn't just come to a halt, so how did we do that? We did that by issuing more bonds. in order to make up for that. And from our standpoint, bonding, it can be a very responsible part of transportation and large capital projects, but when you start substituting borrowing for actual revenue, and you don't adjust the revenues, then you get yourself in trouble. And that's somewhat what's happened to us here in Wisconsin. If you look at, on this chart here, as recent as 2002, for every dollar we brought into the transportation fund via the gas tax and registration fee, about 7 cents of that went out to service the debt, pay for debt service. As of today, about 20 cents of every dollar that comes in goes off the top to pay for debt service. So we've got less revenue coming in, and of the revenue that's coming in, about 20 cents out of every dollar is being eaten up with debt service off the top. So I would say those four things have really come together to put us in a situation where we're not able to keep up and meet the needs that we have for our infrastructure. So just to put a little bit of that in perspective in terms of how we compare with our neighbors, if you look again at that $75 you pay to register your car every year, and if you look at the 30.9 cents per gallon that you're paying in state gas tax, for the average person driving the average car, according to the Department of Transportation, that means that person is paying about $23 a month in state gas tax and registration fees combined. If you look at those gas tax registration fees combined for our neighbors with the similar car and mileage, for Minnesota it's about $42 a month. Michigan, it's currently $28 a month, but Michigan just recently passed a transportation package where they increased their registration fees by about 20% and their gas tax by about 7 cents. And so that number will be about $34 a month for them beginning in 2017. Iowa also just recently passed a transportation package where they increased their gas tax 10 cents and their registration fees 20%. I say percentage because theirs are value-based registration fees. So in Iowa they pay about $41 per month. In Illinois they pay about $39 per month on gas tax and registration fees. Together that does not include tolls. So you can see the money that we're paying in our user fees that are going into this separate transportation fund are significantly lower than what any of our neighbors are putting in. When I say into a separate transportation fund, it is a segregated transportation fund, and it has been for some time. However, there was a period of time in the early 2000s where there was money that was taken out of the transportation fund and was used to plug holes in other areas of the budget and the general fund, and was replaced again with some bonding. And so that a lot of people lost faith in the user fee concept. So we, along with other groups, worked with the legislature to get a constitutional amendment question placed on the ballot in 2014. It was on the November 2014 ballot, and it asked Wisconsin voters whether they would support amending Wisconsin's constitution to require constitutionally that any of the user fee dollars we pay that go into the transportation fund have to constitutionally be spent only on transportation. That went on the ballot, and it passed with an 80% vote statewide, which is pretty unique these days. So the money that is going into that fund now only is spent on transportation. So just briefly tried to lay a little bit about where we were and where we're at. As I said, we did not, as a state, we weren't able to come to consensus in the last budget and come up with a long-term sustainable funding system. This next budget, it's going to be debated again. We've been going around the state holding some regional meetings, having a whole host of different businesses, healthcare, agriculture, timber, and other groups coming in and talking about their needs in the system and the problems that they're facing right now. And on the heels of that, there's been a lot of discussion. The governor recently has said that he's going to ask his Department of Transportation Secretary to submit a 0% increase budget once again, which has spurred a lot more discussion. You've probably seen in the press. The Assembly Speaker, Robin Voss, was on Mike Richer this last weekend saying that he fundamentally disagrees with that approach and that the conservative thing to do is to pay as we go and not kick this can down the road any further. That's a position where we're at, that if we don't address the user fee system now, we're going to drive up the cost of projects and we're going to hinder a lot of our businesses' ability to compete effectively. So we're going around talking to groups. The other metric that I didn't talk about when I was showing the report card and the others was the Wisconsin County Highway Association did a survey of the 72 counties, county highway commissioners in the state, asking them, based upon the current funding level that you're receiving, what sort of replacement schedule are you on for how much you're able to do right now based on current funding in a given year. I think last I saw, I think there's about 60 of the 72 counties that responded, and for the roads that are generally engineered to last about 30 to 40 years, the average replacement schedule for counties in the state was at 200 years. So, you know, when you look at that schedule, the towns are embarking on the same effort right now to find that out, but I know Mike Colas, the executive director, said is for many of his towns the answer is infinity, and the League of Municipalities is looking at that with the cities as well. So the dynamic, I think, at the state and local level, and again, the transportation fund that these funds go into don't only just fund roads either, it funds our mass transit systems, it funds our ports to the extent that there's state funding, and funds airports as well. So from our standpoint, we're hoping this next budget that we're able to come to some consensus like 24 other states around the country have in the last couple of years to adjust some of the user fees so that we can address our transportation system so that it can meet the needs of businesses and people in this state. So I tried to, I will stop, and I don't know if, is there questions or no? Okay. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions from the floor?
If not, thank you for your time.
Oh, hold on. Supervisor Ron Frederick, you have the floor.
If I read the paper right, it seems like that our governor here is not interested in raising any road tax of any kind. So am I wrong or right?
Basically, you're right at this time. What he has said is that the only way he would foresee raising the gas tax or registration fee is if he can find an offsetting tax cut elsewhere in the budget that would be equal or greater to the taxpayer. But he hasn't come up with what that tax cut would be. And so with that being said, then he said if not, then they're going to try to concentrate simply on maintaining the current backbone system. When his Department of Transportation secretary was interviewed in the State Journal about that, he said if we do stick at that his estimation is that about 90% of the roads will continue to deteriorate.
In the meantime, we dodge potholes and whatever, huh? Thank you.
Any other questions from the floor? Seeing none, I would like to thank Mr. Thompson for coming down for us, and thank you to Supervisor Boyd Frederick for having him join us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to note that we have 3 supervisors that have been excused tonight: Supervisor O'Day, Supervisor Decker, and Supervisor Bostrom. We'll now open it up to citizen comments. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Good evening. David Hallman, 1341 52nd Street. Dear County Board of Supervisors, last week's events in Orlando still have our nation and our community in tragedy, confusion, and perhaps even minor paranoia. As I both attended and watched vigils or prayer services, I noted that there's also still intense pain at the deaths of primarily black men by law enforcement. An emotion I think that is perhaps even more heightened by the recent one-year anniversary of Dylan Roof killing 8 African Americans at Mother Emanuel in South Carolina. All of these tragedies are deeply interwoven on a variety of levels, and I would like to address what action we can take locally as a community to subvert a similar situation, although our populations are somewhat the same and somewhat different. What is obvious and is frightening to me is that the conditions that occurred as precursors to this type of tragedy are equivalent: a lack of legislative protection and non-biased law enforcement. With regard to the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting, I want to place emphasis on the fact that the majority of the victims are Latino LGBTQIS people, that is to say lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgendered, queer, intersex, and same-gender loving, as well as LGBTQIS Muslim people. Both of these demographics we have as subsets within our own community, and they have the added dimension of religion into the cultural life, which can make being an LGBTQIS person a traumatic experience. As a result, such persons are forced to live a separate social life, unseen and unknown to everyone but the closest of personal friends. Sustaining this second life can oftentimes burden someone with deep inner torment. The academic work in the field of professional psychology speaks directly to this problem, and it coincides very nicely with the conversations that we've had around mental health and crisis intervention training. So, at the core of the struggle is the battle for recognition of the whole person, and we as local policymakers can work to reduce and relieve the kind of suffering I spoke about earlier. The Human Rights Campaign has long been aware of this, and they have developed the Municipal Equality Index, which scores government policy and programs across 5 different areas of their recognition of LGBTQIS people. A perfect score is a 100. We as Kenosha are sitting at a 38. I believe that in terms of preventing these kinds of tragedies, it is certainly in our best interest to look at the the HRC Municipal Equality Index as well as Campaign Zero, because the question at hand for us when we look at mental health and the psychological literature makes it clear is how do we provide care and protection to LGBTQIS people as well as people of color, realizing that what we do and how we do it has effects on the personal safety of all of us. It's clear from the psych literature that internalized bias is destructive to everyone in community. So that is why I'm suggesting both the HRC Municipal Equality Index as well as Campaign Zero as appropriate public policy responses to address those issues. In closing, I've worked with you on the foreclosure crisis, I've worked with you on healthcare, I worked with you early on sustainability, and I enjoyed all of those projects very much. But the one thing that I was thinking about in my house before I came here tonight, in so many different studies, whether it is city and county or Kenosha, they reference as being a key problem is complacency. No one's really ever been able to identify where that complacency exists that prevents us from taking action. I think, from what I have heard and from what I have seen, is many times we treat things as though that's not our problem. Things happen in America, but they don't happen here. And so because we have that thinking, we don't engage. And in some cases, it is to our detriment. In other cases, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I don't think that this is one of those situations, and I think that we can act and we can act appropriately, and we can do this by January of 2016 or perhaps even mid-March. So I will leave the 3 psych papers that I have referenced. There's a letter on your desk with your district number written on the envelope. The psych papers I spoke about I will leave with the county clerk for you to view. They will also be delivered to your email inbox tomorrow morning. The other thing I want to let you know is that in the envelope is also a personal letter from me about my experiences living in Kenosha. So you have that to look forward to, and then what I will give you tomorrow morning or tonight, that will be in your email inbox. So it will be the 3 PDFs in your email along with the link for the Campaign Zero and the HRC Municipal Equality Index. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hellman. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Matt Flynn, 7945 18th Avenue. I'm here today to speak again about Kemper Center. As a businessman trying to get answers to my clients, I want to thank you, Chairperson Bruning, for your recent email. I want everyone to know that that was the first response yesterday that I've had regarding the County Executive's Office meeting that we had on May 17th. While I appreciate your efforts, it is of immediate concern to our customers, most of which are citizens of Kenosha County, that we know the status of our contract with Kemper Center. You all have that contract. I find it strange that with the attorneys in this room that we cannot understand whether this contract is valid or not, and we can't go to our customers and let them know. I want you to know that we first contacted the County Executive's Office by phone back in early March after our customers expressed concern for the additional charges imposed on them for using our catering services over another. Since that time, other customers have informed us that they were told by Kemper Center staff that our catering services are not available to them at Kemper Center. The chief of staff during that phone call seemed to be unwilling to allow our concerns to be brought to the county executive, and she claimed that she had talked to Gary Granke, president of Kemper Center, and that he denied requesting additional charges for our services. At this point, we reach out to a now retired county board supervisor and other key county department heads. That effort brought about a meeting with the county executive on May 17th. At that meeting, it appeared that the county executive and other staff members had a pre-meeting with Grenke and Valancourt from Kemper Center. At the conclusion of the meeting, it appeared to us that another wrap-up meeting with Grenke and Valancourt took place. It appears that these two gentlemen, Grenke and Valancourt, residents of Racine, are allowed to control how county government operates, while good, hard-working citizens of Kenosha have to wait for answers to valid concerns regarding this county park venue. It also appears that based on material handed out to brides and customer feedback, that preferential treatment has been provided to certain vendors over others. You all have copies of this. We feel that we are left with no other options at this point, and now have the unpleasant task of informing our customers that have secured our services at Kemper Center for this year that our efforts have failed in getting answers to their questions. I have talked to several vendors already and intend to have conversation with other past and present vendors in the near future with regards to this issue. I will report back in 2 weeks of my findings on that. Like other citizens of Kenosha, I read the Kenosha News, including the article about the Kemper Center melee. It appears that in that article, that comments from the Chief of Staff regarding the incidents were her attempts to downplay the dangerous nature of that incident that was caught on a 1 and 40-second video. While Kemper Center officials were unable for comment on the melee article, a letter from Valancourt has surfaced, which you all have, explaining the incident and downplaying the serious nature of that event. We have valid concerns for the safety of our staff, other vendors, guests at events, should these type of bookings continue. At this point, I'd like my wife to talk about some other pressing issues regarding Kemper Center.
Reset it. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
Annette Flynn, 7945 18th Avenue. After researching Kemper Center, I just want to touch on a few key points that are relevant to the citizens as well, and most importantly to the taxpayers of Kenosha County. The first one is in August of 1997, there was an article regarding Kemper Center and a $1.2 million loan in the Kenosha News. I've supplied you with a copy of that as well. The county would take out a $1.2 million loan over 5 years for Kemper Center, which included remodeling of the South Wing's kitchen, dining room into a 50 to 220 person space conference center. The later phase of this project was to include breakaway rooms off the conference center and remodeling of the gymnasium's 3rd and 4th floors into the office space for lease to nonprofit agencies. It appears that that gymnasium's 3rd and 4th floor remodeling has never been completed. My question is, what was the money used for? My second point that I want to make out is that I have reviewed the 990 tax returns for Kemper Center, Inc. that date back from 1998 to 2014. It appears that throughout the 16 years, Kemper Center, Inc. has reported receiving $6.9 million in government grants, gifts, and contributions, and of which $2 million of the $6.9 million came from Kenosha County taxpayers. Our question is, what was the $6.9 million used for? And the third point I want to point out is that while reviewing the 990 tax returns, it looks as though Kemper Center has a written whistleblower policy. I've supplied you with a copy of what that means and what it entails for a nonprofit 501(c)(3) for your review. Federal law prohibits all corporations, including nonprofits, from retaliating against employees who blow the whistle on their employer's financial management and accounting principles. We feel that this is relevant based on the 2 citizens who commented at the last county board meeting. What I am asking today is for a full FBI investigation into what has been done on Kemper Center, Inc. and with Kemper Center Foundation, Inc., including questioning past and current employees of Kemper Center, Inc. Secondly, at the very least, a forensic audit should be performed on Kemper Center, Inc., as well as Kemper Center Foundation, Inc. And I would also like a report back to the county board within the next 60 days of what the findings are from these two requests. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Adele Fry, 1433 28th Court. I'd like to thank Leah Blau for offering me to come here tonight rather than just listen to me personally. Then she said maybe that you all would like to know a little something about what I have to say today. I'm emotional about it, so I'm sorry. I'll try not to be. I'm one of the 11 employees that was let go from the Kenosha Community Health Center on May 31st, and I'm here because for the last few years we have, as employees, hit many roadblocks trying to get some kind of accountability for the executive director of the Kenosha Community Health Center. I'm sorry. We just continually hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock because the executive director, anytime that we would maybe get someone to listen or maybe open their doors to hear the problems that we are facing inside of the clinic, and she would retain an attorney. We would get threatening emails, threatening our jobs. We were shut down at every turn. We were shut down. In February, we were finally given an opportunity to be able to go before the board of directors of the Kenosha Community Health Center, and she again retained an attorney and shut them down, and we were unable to meet with them. And at that time, the president of the board resigned, and again, we were shut down. Well, we were offered a focus group. We were offered 2 different sessions of focus groups. 14 people were allowed to sign up. We had to sign up, and it had to be known who was signing up for these focus groups. And all that information went to the executive director and to the human resources director. No one else was allowed to see any of the raw data before it was given to the board of directors. What I would like to tell you is in the last 2 years, 13 full-time dentists have left the clinic. We're told that there are 8 remaining dentists, but 2 of those are very part-time. They only work 2 days a week. 1 is strictly pediatric, and 2 are leaving in August. The CFO left, the Chief Compliance Officer left. We've gone through 2 HR directors, 1 support staff for the human resources. Our grant writer left. 3 quality people have left. 2 executive the executive accountant left. 2 of the medical doctors that were medical directors have left. 2 behavioral health directors have left. 3 physician assistants. 4 executive assistants to the executive director have left. She now has a temp executive director. I'm telling you all this because all of those people directly reported to the executive director, who has no accountability to anyone. And all of those people have gone to the board of directors with no response, no kind of accountability. We have, there seems to be nobody to go to for accountability. A medical van was purchased for Racine County because Racine County's Community Health Center has already gone under. And there is no staff to implement that van that was purchased. We have resorbed the Racine community people into our Kenosha Community Health Center, but we have lost all of those providers. So we have created a bigger need, and we are having less people to provide the need for them. And so you can see that's creating an obvious problem, and the patients are having limited resources that were already limited, and now they're just becoming more and more and more limited, regardless of what we're being told. That we're being told that our patients are being seen, but if you can see the numbers and if you can see the people that are available to see them, they can't possibly be being seen.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Citizen comments? Seeing no other citizen comments, we are now closed. Announcements of the chair. I have, everyone has on their desk the launch that is happening over at the Fox River Water Trail on tomorrow night or tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I was actually in attendance to the Waterford one that opened up last week. They had a ribbon cutting up there and it was beautiful. If you ever have a chance to go up to Waterford and see their launch, it's very nice. So right now it's a collaboration between Waukesha, Racine, and Kenosha County, and we hope to have it go down into Illinois too, so that there are several kayak and canoe launches all the way down the Fox River. So it should be pretty nice. That is it for mine. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Alverman, you have the floor.
Thank you. Our next meeting is usually the first Monday in July. I believe that's 4th of July, though, so it'll be the next Monday for facilities, public works, and that will be when the discussion and any comments about the Kemper Center will be on our agenda. So anybody that wishes to attend that meeting, I've already had numerous meetings with staff, with county staff, with the facilities staff, and discussions with probably a good dozen people on the items that we've heard here. So we'll be discussing that. It'll be on our agenda, and we'll report back to the county board. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alverman. Supervisor Hallman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We send a number of our constituents who are on Badger Care to the Community Health Center, and I've heard from them that there have been problems over the years. This perhaps may be a wise time for us to at least take a little bit closer of a listening ear than we have been, not necessarily to intervene in any critical fashion, but certainly unsift more of what's been going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor reports? If not, supervisor reports are now closed. County Clerk?
County Executive Appointments. Lauren Fox to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Administrative Appeals.
Refer to Finance and Administration.
Brooke Infacino to serve on the Kenosha County Workforce Development Board.
Refer to Human Services.
Paul Haglund to serve on the Kenosha County Workforce Development Board.
Refer to Human Services.
Ordinance, one reading, 5 from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Michael Lazzarani, owner, Mark Larkin, MLML Properties agent, requesting a rezoning from B3 Highway Business District to B3 Highway Business District and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Wheatland. Decker, yes. Poole, yes. Galitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
I move Ordinance 5.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Poole.
Ordinance number 5 for Michael Lazzaroni. The property is located at the northwest corner of the intersection of County Trunk Highway KD, or 352nd Avenue, and Geneva Road. The rezoning would update the wetlands on the property to reflect the actual field conditions. The Town of Wheatland recommended approval of the request.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. I do see a couple lights here. Supervisor Alverman, you have the floor.
I didn't push a button. Sorry.
Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Through the chair to Supervisor Poole, I'm looking at this map, and it just strikes me as odd that there's this little sliver right in the middle of everything. So can you explain that to me? I'm looking at the map. First of all, it says see Exhibit 1, and I don't know if this is Exhibit 1 or there's some other documents, but I'm looking at this map, and I see the cutout piece, and I understand the B3 to C1 on that upper portion, but then it says remain B3 in the middle of that dark area. So, I mean, can you explain that to me?
Are you looking at the one about the wetlands, or are you looking at the other one?
I'm looking at the one that's right after ordinance number 5. And I'm seeing Geneva Road and KD. I'm seeing the corner cut out of it. And I'm seeing the little piece in the upper right hand of that corner that I kind of can understand. And then I'm seeing it says remain B3, 2.39 acres in the middle of everything. Is there anybody else on the committee who can answer my question?
It's simply a change in the wetland, so I don't know what that sliver is, what you're talking about there.
That doesn't help me.
I can answer.
Supervisor Skalitsky, do you have anything to?
I'm just wondering, are you on the last page, Supervisor Gens, or of the illustration, or the PDF that's attached?
That may be it says description, see exhibit number 1 attached. And I'm looking at the map that comes right after that, the picture that comes right after that in the packet I got. So I don't know how I can be looking at the wrong thing or be confused, although it's possible, but this is what I'm looking at. This right here.
That one, okay.
Okay. And I see that little rectangle in the middle of that, and I just wonder what that is and why
That's a building there.
That's a building that's been vacant for, I think, at least 10 or 15 years. And the delineation of kind of that, looks like the southeastern portion of the United States with Florida sticking out, that is strictly wetlands delineation. And you're right, it makes no sense, but wetlands have no boundaries. That's all that is. So.
Yeah, and I get that part. I just didn't understand the vacant building sit in the middle of what we're trying to do here, and we're going to leave that zone something else for a vacant building. I mean,
it's updating the wetlands mapping only, and then it would allow them to potentially be able to sell this property off at a later date. So it's updating the maps, the wetland map to reflect what it currently is. Because right now, it is not delineated correctly.
Okay, is there a road back to that piece? Okay.
KD runs north-south there, along the top of that rectangle, if you would. Geneva Road to the, I guess that would be the south.
Supervisor Elverman.
I guess I'm the only guy that knows the area, so I can answer that. The building in question that you're looking at was an old First Star Bank, then a U.S. bank. It was recently a resale shop. It hadn't been vacant. It's been vacant for about a year. Directly across to the south is Kirkman Brothers Construction. The big road that you see leading up to the wetlands is Best Bargains, if that familiarizes you. But that building was a bank. It's been a business of various sorts for different years, and so that's what you're seeing. I don't know the decision-making on this, but that's what you're seeing.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. Supervisor Gens, you still have the floor.
I don't know what to say. That's fine. I mean, I'm just confused by what I'm looking at, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Seeing no other lights, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 6 from the Planning, Development, Extension, Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Thomas H. and Mary P. Thielen, owner, requesting a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District to A1 Agricultural Preservation District, R1 Rural Residential District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Randall. Decker, yes. Poole, yes. Galitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
I move ordinance 6.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Poole.
This property is located on the north side of County Trunk Highway HM, or 116th Street, approximately 385 feet west of the intersection with 347th Avenue. The rezoning would allow for an existing residence to be subdivided from the larger agricultural land. The Town of Randall recommended approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 16 from the Human Service Committee, a resolution to approve authorizing Brookside Care Center to participate in the Leading Choice Network. Gable, yes. Hallman, yes. Poole, yes. Blau, yes. Berg, yes. Dodge, yes. Retzlaff, yes.
Supervisor Gable.
I move resolution 16.
I have a first by Supervisor Gable and a second by Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Gable.
Yeah, this basically is going to let Brookside get into a network that will promote them and basically give them pre-approval. It'll help them in training. It's like a one-year contract, and it, just basically will spread the word about what Brookside is to a network.
Supervisor Retzlaff, you have the floor.
Yes, when we were discussing this, I initially had some issues with this. I'm not going to get involved in the fact that it's joining this network, what it does and doesn't do for us. I did support it, but at least it's only for 1 year, because we are actually spending money on this to get in, and I'm not so sure we're going to get a whole lot out of this. That's just my opinion. So I did support this, but if you dig through a lot of the details, you can find some issues with it. But for just 1 year, I think it's fine. So that's my opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzlaff. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to the chair of the committee, do we know what the annual cost is for joining this network? Thank you.
It was about $10,500, and it was a 1-year contract.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
Would the chair explain a little more clearly what exactly this is, and what are we doing, what are we getting out of this? I need a little more information.
It's putting Brookside into a network where agencies, insurance companies, and hospitals, it's kind of like pre-approval. Brookside will be on a list of places that they can send their clients. They don't have to negotiate prices. It's all preset.
So that means, in dollars and cents, we're going to get more private pay people, or is that what you're trying to say, or am I off base here?
I believe you're going to get more private pay. It just expands their network.
So who would go to Leading Choice Network and say, where do I go in Kenosha County for nursing home care? Who would know that by just living here? I mean, I could understand if I lived in Chicago, that might be very confusing, but I think I still need a little more info on this. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I'm not understanding why there's only a handful of nursing homes here.
Madam Chair, can we bring Fran up to the microphone?
Yes, Fran, if you'd like to step up to the podium.
Sitting too long and my foot fell asleep, so hopefully my brain's working. The purpose of the Leading Choice Network is to assist leading age members, which is what Brookside is. We have an organization in the state of Wisconsin of not-for-profits, and it's to assist all of the members into accessing contracts, negotiating favorable rates and conditions of those contracts. We're talking about usually commercial insurance, Medicare Advantage products, things like that. Also gathering, the network would gather financial and clinical data which can be used to demonstrate the members of the network their worth and why they are a preferred provider. Insurance companies pretty much would rather deal with a network when they're negotiating rates, because there's, 500-600 nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin, and they don't really want to try and go into every single nursing home and enter into a contract. So by being part of a network, that work is done by the executive director of the Leading Choice and their staff. Also, it's difficult when you have clients that are wanting to come to Brookside, but we don't have a contract with XYZ insurance company, and oftentimes nursing homes try to get a contract with an insurance company and they don't want to talk to you because they're limited in the amount of contracts they let. So it's also an opportunity they will assist in developing best practice protocols, and they can also analyze financial outcomes and data. They can work to better negotiate costs with the contracts to cover all the costs, and to also deal with any outliers that might be in the contract. There's also an opportunity to negotiate key vendor contracts, and because it's a network, there's an opportunity to apply for grants via the state or Center for Medicaid Services, CMS.
Supervisor Rose, does that answer your questions?
Well, I'm not sure. The question I have, is this going to bring us more revenue, or is this something that has nothing to do with revenue? Because I know you're very steeped in this, know the language of it. I'm not. Is this network going to bring us more revenues, or doesn't that have anything to do with the issue of revenues?
It would have. We are hoping that by having an opportunity to enter into more contracts statewide, that we would have an opportunity for more revenue.
So by more contracts, you mean prospective patient wants to come and they have insurance covering this, but we're not in the network and therefore they won't come to Brookside? Is that correct or incorrect?
That could be correct. Some insurance companies, if you have a contract with this insurance company, and we're mostly, Supervisor Rose, we're talking about Medicare products. If you have a contract with a certain insurance company, you have a favorable rate. But if you do not have a contract with the insurance company, many times the beneficiary who is wanting to come to the nursing home would have to pay a copay, which is usually cost prohibitive.
So when you say favorable rate to us or favorable rate to the patient, so that if it's the patient, does that mean our rates are coming down? Is that what you're saying?
No, it would be a favorable rate to us as Brookside, but if we have a contract with a patient's insurance company, as opposed to not having a contract, the patient would not have to chip in and pay a copay of, $200 a day or $180 a day, which sometimes that happens if you don't have a contract with them.
So how are we coming up with more revenue then?
Because we would have access to more contracts that are negotiated at, we're anticipating more favorable rates.
So more people?
Yes, it could be more people. More people would have access if we accept their insurance than not.
So if you put $10,000 into this, you're expecting to get more out of it, or that has nothing to do with it?
This is the first year of this network, and Leading Age Wisconsin was responding to members' concerns, and they anticipated having maybe 40 members, and right now there's 80 who have signed up, and there is a ceiling on it, how many they can sign up. So we are anticipating that this will be beneficial to Brookside by offering more availability of different contracts, which will enhance our revenue.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Director?
Oh, Fran.
Yeah, Fran.
Stay here.
So you can correct me if I'm not using the right terminology, but it strikes me as though it almost creates creates a situation where Brookside becomes a preferred provider within this network. Is that a good way to do it? And or a good way to describe what I'm getting at is PPOs are out there, and you'll get reduced rates, but you get greater access to a larger number of patients. Is that accurate? Or potential access?
Yes, but I don't know that it would equate with reduced rates. I mean, we're not expecting to have our rates reduced.
Yeah, it's just eliminating the co-pays because you've got this
right.
larger group of individuals you're pulling from.
Right.
Was the proposal that was given to you that some of the return of the $10,000 would be in improved costs, not just because contracts with insurance providers, but for other service providers also? Or is that not part of this? What I mean is, maybe it's a maintenance contract, maybe it's a transportation contract. Does that come into it at all? Or is it just strictly having greater access to additional insurance private providers?
That may come into it as the network evolves and grows. Like I said, this is the first time the Leading Age has done this, but it is anticipated that they could get access because of the large group to better contracts.
And those contracts at this point are strictly based on insurance or care provider or insurance companies that are paying for their private pay patients, correct? This is mainly private pay, correct?
No, it is insurance, it is Medicare, and Medicare Advantage programs like Humana, okay. United. I mean, Medicare Advantage programs are outpacing the straight Medicare A, and so that's mostly what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
I'll make it quick because I did speak on this, but I had these same concerns in that we had a meeting. That's why I'm okay with this for a year. What maybe Fran isn't totally explaining, we're talking about Medicare sup plans that these insurance carriers offer. It's not a lot of money because Medicare covers Part A and B cover a lot of the expense that someone has at Brookside. You can, for a supplemental plan, you can either go with a straight sup plan, which costs about $225 to an employee, a member, or someone over age 65, or an advantage plan, which is less, but you've got co-pays. So basically, what these carriers want to do, Humana, United Healthcare, et cetera, want to be able to somehow negotiate the small piece of the advantage plan or the other sup plan to Medicare. So we're not talking about this giant reduction in costs or reduction in our fees, because we're talking about a really small piece of the pie anyways. So that's why I had some issues with this, but I think give this a year, they'll have some numbers back, and that's my opinion. And so remember, this is just, the insurance piece, this is just for Medicare sup plans, which are very limited in both how much they pay and how long they go for, because Medicare, the big piece, takes care of it, and that's all done through governments on fixed fees and so forth. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman. Just through the chair to Ms. Petrick, we take a look at what we've got here at Brookside currently. It's my understanding that we're pretty close to capacity. There is not much extra bed space available. Is that true?
Our census is about 148, 149 on a daily basis.
Out of a total number of how many?
153.
So very, very close. When we take a look at the Medicare census as it is currently, how many residents do we have currently, approximately, in the Medicare slots?
Today, I'm sorry, I was on vacation for 5 days, but
Just, the last month's average or so, not,
I would say about 38, 39, 40. Our goal is to have 41.
And the rest are private pay and Medicaid?
Correct.
So is the intention then to skew this a little bit more towards the Medicare side of things? Is that the intent?
The intention is to not necessarily skew it to Medicare, but to make sure that the Medicare clients that we do have, that we're getting access where we can take all sorts of insurances and get favorable rates for them.
I think I understand in principle. I think what the board would be comfortable knowing is if we embark upon this one-year experiment, so to speak, how do we have some accountability, some metric to gauge if this is really working? Could there be a quarterly report detailing the effectiveness of this program? Do you have a response to that?
Certainly, if that's what you'd like.
But there is a way of measuring it actually to determine if this program is bearing fruit and making headway. Is that possible?
I think most of it would be measuring our census, our Medicaid census, and the different contracts that we are able to take because of the network. And so I'm sure we can come up with some reasonable and metrics that make sense.
Well, if that's a possibility, I'd like to add a friendly amendment to this proposal, and that would be that on a quarterly basis, it's reported to the Oversight Committee, and the Oversight Committee can report to us here at the County Board of the effectivity of this proposal. Thank you.
I have a first by Supervisor Grady, a second by Supervisor Rose to amend the resolution. Any questions on the resolution or on the amendment? Supervisor Retzlaff on the amendment.
Okay, can I make a different suggestion? Can we put this back to committee? Do we have to do this tonight? These are some great questions. We weren't prepared for this at our meetings, at our committee meeting. I don't know. I don't think Fran can answer that honestly, because that's my opinion. Would we accept a friendly amendment to bring this back to committee? Was that something I can do?
Supervisor Grady.
I'll withdraw my proposal, my amendment, if the committee wishes to review it further and then bring it back to us.
Supervisor Rose, do you concur?
Yes.
The motion to what? Oh, yeah. I need a second to refer it back to committee.
Second.
It was Supervisor Skalitsky. And I'm going to clear the board again. Discussion on referring it back to committee. Supervisor Gens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard from Fran that there is a ceiling on the number of people that can get into this network. So before I take more time in referring it back to committee, I would like to ask her what that ceiling is and if she feels that another month would cause a delay that would not allow us to be involved in this network.
She said that the ceiling was 80. Was that correct?
No, she said 80 have already signed up. They expected 40, but there's a ceiling on it, was exactly what I heard.
You're correct, Supervisor Gens. We don't know exactly what the ceiling is yet. They were hoping to get 40, but they may say we've got 80 and now that's as much as we can handle right now. But the other thing is, there is a deadline that we are supposed to have the contract signed by July 8th.
So referring it back to committee would not give enough time.
Yeah, since I still have the floor and I'm going to talk about this, I mean, there have been great questions and great discussion from the board on this issue. But I think we have the person who's done a great job in Fran here to talk about the financial aspects, and I do understand that there is a cost associated with it. So I'm looking at this, it says no budget adjustment or additional levy for 2016. So it's not going to cost us anything to get into this for a year, and I can envision making up a metric that would show if we've got some new contracts from this network, and that could be reported. So I think what is being asked of Fran and what she's asking of us is something that we could get done tonight. There have been great questions, good discussion. I understand clearly what's going on here, so I'm not going to support referring it back, especially with the timeline. We have Fran here, we have the committee here. It's basically, if I'm correct, it costs a little money to get involved with this network, and it'll help us alleviate some of the costs to the patients that come to Brookside and bring some more Medicare possibly. I think for a year we try it. I'm not going to micromanage to the level of sending it back and possibly losing the ability to contract this. So I will not be supporting the deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. We have a lot of lights on the board, so please be patient. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was the question I had, was the time sensitivity of this. I think Fran does an excellent job of managing Brookside. I'm withdrawing my second for referral to committee, back to committee. I'm asking Supervisor Retzloff to withdraw his motion, and I think that we can get this done. $10,500 is a small number compared to the revenue that Brookside generates. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Retzloff, did you want to withdraw? He says no. We will move on to...
A second. You need a second.
Oh, yeah. Do I have another second? Any other second? Seeing no other second, the motion fails. Okay, I'm going to clear it again. On the original resolution. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you. On the original resolution, I will restate my amendment that quarterly the management of Brookside will report to the supervising committee. That would be Human Services, and they would report to us as to the effectivity of this particular new venture.
I have a second by Supervisor Rose for the amendment. Clearing the board again. Anyone want to speak on the amendment? Yes, we do. Supervisor Holman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would wonder if perhaps maybe quarterly is a bit too soon, maybe just partway through the course of the year of having this implemented.
Maker of the motion is shaking his head no. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quarterly is too often. I won't support this motion. It's $10,500 for 1 year. I think we can wait for an update at the end. This is a brand new program. It needs a little bit of opportunity to get off the ground. And in 1 year, we'll be able to reevaluate and reassess whether or not we want to continue with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Gable, you have the floor.
I don't have any trouble with a quarterly report. I mean, but like I say, it's only a 1 year contract, and at the committee meeting, there was all the same questions that were asked here, and we all come to the same consensus. It seemed like it could be a good idea. We're only doing it for 1 year, and it's only $10,000.
Thank you, Supervisor Gable. Supervisor Dodge, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to say that Fran's done a fabulous job out at Brookside. She's taken it off the tax rolls. we have a tremendous investment and expansion out there, and I think we need to give her those tools that she feels is necessary to get off to a good start with all of the money that's being put into that place. And I think it might be difficult to give a quarterly report. I'm not going to support the quarterly report, but I will support this program for her. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just to elaborate on the quarterly report, we have this routinely in our accounting procedures. It's very easy for the department head to come and say, there's not enough information, there's not enough data, I'll have something for you in the future. So it's not burdensome, it's not onerous. If the data's not there, you say the data's not there. But at least we're doing our duty to taxpayers to say, on a new venture, we're taking $10,000 and spending it, we should have some accountability. That's what we do here. We're accountability people. So once a quarter to say there is something, there isn't something, it's not a big deal. Vote for it or don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Any other on the, what are we on?
We're on the amendment.
On the amendment. The amendment for the quarterly reports. I have a roll call requested. Yes, if you're in favor of the amendment. No, if you are not.
Yes, 6 no. Passes.
Yep. Motion passes. I'm going to clear the board again. Now we're on the resolution with the amendment. If anyone would like to speak. Seeing no lights. Roll call has been requested. Yes, if you are for the resolution with the amendment. Motion passes.
Resolution 17 from the Human Service Committee, a resolution to approve the county executive appointment of Dr. Brian Wolf to the Kenosha County Workforce Development Board. Gable, yes. Hallman, yes. Poole, yes. Blau, yes. Berg, yes. Dodge, yes. Retzloff, yes.
Supervisor Gable.
I move the resolution.
I have a first by Supervisor Gable, a second by Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Gable.
This is a reappointment. So, and he's been real good about attending meetings. So I move the motion.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 18 from the Human Service Committee, a resolution to approve the county executive appointment of Dr. Mario B. Maritato to the Kenosha County Board of Health. Gable, yes. Hallman, yes. Poole, yes. Blau, yes. Berg, yes. Dodge, yes. Retzloff, yes.
Supervisor Gable.
I move resolution 18.
I have a first by Supervisor Gable and a second by Supervisor Berg. Supervisor Gable.
And this again is another reappointment, and his attendance at the meetings has been excellent.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 19 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Michael Underhill to the Kenosha County Library System Board. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gens, yes. Kubicki, excused. Dodge, yes. Esposito, yes. Retzloff, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I would move the appointment of Mr. Underhill to the Library Board.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose, a second by Vice Chair Esposito. Supervisor Rose.
Thank you. This is the County Library System Board. Mr. Underhill is, of course, a former member of this board, known to many of you. The committee supports his nomination, and we urge your approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
Resolution 20 from...
hold on. I'm sorry? There was. Supervisor Rose has requested a roll call on that. All set. Supervisor Gens, you have not locked in your vote there. Motion passes.
Resolution 20 from the Judiciary and Law and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to recognize surplus federal inmate holds revenue to purchase and install twin boat motors for the Sheriff's Department 2003 Zodiac Safe Boat. Judiciary and Law, Blau, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Retzloff, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Wamble, yes. Finance Administration, Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes. Kubicki excused. Esposito, yes. Retzloff, yes.
Supervisor Blau.
I move Resolution 20.
I have a first by Supervisor Blau, a second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Blau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution is to recognize $40,000 of the surplus earned from federal inmate holds to afford the replacement of boat motors on the Zodiac Safe Boat. Year to date, our surplus, or the federal housing inmate surplus, has been $345,000, and so they are requesting $40,000 for these motors. When asked, they said that the current motors are too short and the boat is slow, and the additional concern is that after Labor Day weekend, the Coast Guard is going to be leaving Kenosha County, so the Sheriff's Department feels they need to be prepared for when they leave, so they are asking for your support on this.
Thank you, Supervisor Blau. Supervisor Gable, you have the floor.
I'd like to amend that motion that we buy Mercury outboard motors from a company in the state of Wisconsin.
I have a first by Supervisor Gable to amend it to have them buy from the state of Wisconsin, and a second by Supervisor Dodge. Vice Chair Esposito.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to speak to that. That was brought up at our committee, and I was told by the Sheriff's Department that they send that out for bid. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate where you're coming from with that, but I don't know if you can, it's like an RFP issue. So I don't know if we can specifically state that it's Mercury. You know, I'm just letting the board know that because I did ask that question. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Esposito. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add on what Vice Chairman had said, it's also got the rigging on there. I just don't remember if it's Merck or if it's, I thought it was Merck. And without having to buy the rigging, that will decrease the cost, so that will come into play. Just thought everybody know.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They asked the same questions or brought up the same information. I was just going to look at cost. I mean, ultimately, in my heart, I'd love everything to be produced in Wisconsin, but we are here for the taxpayers, and we would have to know what those are. Plus, we have the RFP issue, so that would be hard for me to go along with. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Dodge, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to amend that motion to, if the bids are within the allowable parameters, that we go with Mercury from Wisconsin.
Are you going to amend your original?
I'll amend my original resolution to go along with Supervisor.
And you're going to second it? All right, clearing the board. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now I have a question through the Chair to the Corp Counsel. When we deal with RFPs and the situation that the Vice Chair just brought up, is that an issue in how we send out RFPs and how we deal with vendors?
Well, I'm going to have to confess that I'm not 100% certain. I'm not sure what's meant by within parameters. Generally speaking, if it's put out for bid, then it's usually the lowest bid or lowest responsible bid. It almost sounds to me as if the intent of the motion is, if everything else is equal and we have two lowest bids, we go with the one from Wisconsin. I don't know that that wouldn't happen anyways. I don't know that that isn't something that would be factored in. It's my understanding, as I say, that generally speaking, if it's a bid process, it's the lowest responsible. I think in case of an RFP, there's sometimes a little bit more, little bit more discretion, but generally speaking, as the board is aware, we go with the lowest responsible bid or proposal on these matters.
Thank you. Through the chair to the maker of the motion, is it if there's two equal bids, or if it's just within shooting range, or what are we talking about parameters? If that could be explained to me.
I think what I'm talking about here is if we have, in some cases, it's my understanding, we have two bids that are close, and I can't define close, but close in monetarily, and one is a reputable dealer, and the other one is not. We don't always have to go with the low bid, and that's the situation I'm talking about here.
Okay, thank you. I will not be supporting this because I think it would undermine our whole RFP process. If vendors find out that we can pick or choose who we want to do after we put out RFPs, that would be a concern. I certainly want to support Wisconsin companies and Made in America, but if we're going to do RFPs, we have to take the best for our constituents. I mean, we're stewards of the money. Thank you.
And if I may, and again, the point that I was making to speak to Supervisor Dodger's point is, it isn't a situation where we have to take the lowest bid in every circumstance. As you say, if there's a responsible, quote unquote, bidder or proposal and one that is sketchier, that is something that is taken into account. The law provides for the lowest responsible bidder. So there are factors beyond just price that can be taken into account. I don't know whether geographic location is one of them.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. I'm going to oppose the motion to amend this resolution. What's the public policy reason behind the proposition here? The sheriff says that the Coast Guard is not going to be operating as it was in the past in Kenosha. They have a location at the Kenosha Harbor that's going to close, so this is a more responsibility for them. Now, they know better than we, I think, what equipment they need or don't need. And if we're going to start jumping in there, I think we have to have some reasons why we don't want to back up their equipment request. Is it because their equipment they're requesting is inferior? That would be an argument. Somebody else said, well, I want to support Made in America. Is that what this is? This is not. That isn't an argument that's being made. So I don't know what the argument is on the other side. Is the other side saying, well, we can get it cheaper elsewhere and therefore we're discharging our responsibilities to the taxpayer? That argument also hasn't been made. So I don't know why we are supporting the amendment if you support the proposition of expanded Sheriff's Department patrolling of the Lake Michigan at the Kenosha location. If you don't support that, that's a public policy reason to oppose it. You don't want the sheriff in the water. But to nickel and dime this and say, well, we don't like their equipment because, tell me what your reason is for opposing the proposition in resolution number 20. I haven't really heard any. So I don't see why we shouldn't go along with the resolution 20 if you support the proposition that the sheriff has an increased responsibility.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
I think Supervisor Gantz pretty much said what I was going to mention. It's a slippery slope if we go saying who we want in these bids. Supervisor Gantz said, if any of the people that bid on this knew that, I think they could sue us. I've been in this situation where one time I was involved in an insurance bid where a county gave it to a domiciled carrier, and the lowest bid was from a carrier that wasn't, and they did get sued for that because they violated their purchasing arrangement that was set, and so I'm surprised that Corp Counsel hasn't kiboshed this right from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzlaff. Supervisor Gable, you have the floor.
I'd like to amend my resolution that we buy Mercury's motors if they're within 5% of the lowest bid. 5%'s not a lot. We're buying in-state. These are people that are supporting Wisconsin. I'm sure they come down to our outlet malls. I mean, you know, maybe we'd still have Chrysler if we bought more American rather than Toyotas.
Corporation Counsel, are we even allowed to do that within our parameters?
I think I've given my opinion. By law, we have to go with the lowest responsible bid.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I guess maybe I didn't state it as forcefully or as definitively as I had intended to. By law, I believe we need to go with the lowest responsible bid. So as Supervisor Retzlaff has noted, while I don't know that I've seen a case specifically like the one that he's described, I know that there are other cases that I've reviewed in terms of situations where municipal governments, such as counties, have attempted to not cherry pick, but certainly direct the way the process is going. The law is the law for a reason, and the law is that we are supposed to go with the lowest responsible bid.
Did you have anything else, Supervisor Gable?
Again, I'll reiterate, this is a Wisconsin company creating Wisconsin jobs. And how are we not looking out for the taxpayers? I mean, granted, they're the taxpayers of Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, but we are too.
Did I have a second to Supervisor Gable's motion? I have a second by Supervisor Kubicki. I'm going to clear the board again on this motion now. Supervisor Sklitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support Resolution 20 as submitted. I will not be supporting the motion because doing so would ignore our friends immediately to the north of us in Sturtevant who produce Evinrude and Johnson, and those are Wisconsin jobs and Wisconsin taxes. So we need to let the RFP process take its course, and may the best bid win. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. Supervisor Elverman.
Well, I may be mistaken, but I've been at this long enough to know that usually the staff is way ahead of us. Committee members, 2 committees have passed this. Did anybody ask what motors they've chosen? Any idea? I'm sure they've got the bids already, right? Anybody here know?
I don't know.
They always have them. This is middle of June, almost July. They've got the bids.
Vice Chair Esposito.
I don't believe they have the bid yet. My understanding is obviously this was brought up, and I talked directly with the Sheriff's Administration about this.
Just recently this was?
Correct. It was the last finance meeting.
This is brand new?
Yes, and my concern is the same concern of Supervisor Retzlaff and Supervisor Sklitsky, that you have an RFP bid. I don't think, I do appreciate, though, American made, and trust me on that aspect, but you're kind of undermining the process. I believe the administration has Mercury. That's what it's geared for or rigged up for. I believe it is. I don't want to say for sure. So this banter going back and forth, I just don't really understand it.
I don't understand it either, and I'm surprised. Normally they've already got these things picked out. But
I don't believe they do.
I wish somebody would have asked. I could have seen the sunset. I want to see the sunset tonight on the way home. But I'm not going to support anything other than how we legal handle an RFP either. So we could vote any time.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Supervisor Sklitsky, did you?
To answer that question, Madam Chair, we did ask, and they had not gone out for RFP because the resolution was not brought to the board for approval. So they didn't have the money, so they're not going out for the RFP. We did ask, and we specifically had stated, if possible, could you rig it with Wisconsin-made engines? And I believe the response, concurring with Vice Chair Esposito, that it was Merck, but I just don't remember. So those questions were asked. We've talked about this long enough. Let's call the question.
Question has been called. This is on the... Oh, do I have a second? I have a second by Supervisor Rose to call the question. This is... Supervisor Overman, state your point.
You cannot debate and then call the question.
That is correct.
I'll call the question.
I have a first by Supervisor Gens and a second by Supervisor Skolitsky. This is on the amendment to the resolution that we require them, if it's within 5%. Yes.
She's setting it up.
We have to vote on the question.
Yeah. We are voting on calling the question, stopping debate. If you're in favor, vote yes. If you are not in favor, vote no.
You want to stop debate? Yeah, correct.
Stopping
On
debate.
this issue.
Motion passes to stop debate. Now, on the amendment to the resolution requiring 5%, if it's within 5%, we go with the American-made. Mercury. Wisconsin. That we go with Wisconsin. All in favor, vote yes. The wrong one. I hit the wrong one. Motion passes, or motion fails. Sorry, motion fails. Okay. On the original resolution. This is on the original resolution now. If you are in favor of the original resolution, vote yes. If you are opposed, vote no.
Change it to no.
The original resolution passes. County Clerk.
What are we on?
21.
Resolution 21 from Supervisor Kubicki and the Legislative Committee, a resolution calling for mandatory testing of school and daycare center water supplied by a public utility. Boyd Frederick, yes. Hallman, yes. Berg, yes. Decker, excused. Franco, yes. Poole, yes. Skolitsky, oops, sorry. Poole, no. Skolitsky, no.
Supervisor Kubicki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move resolution number 21.
I have a first by Supervisor Kubicki and a second by Supervisor Boyd Frederick. Supervisor Kubicki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a public health issue. It deals with infrastructure. Federal law does not require schools to test their water if they get it from a public water utility, which most schools do, and I believe this needs to be changed. And I'm asking to encourage the state legislators to pass laws requiring regular testing for lead and that the results are made public. We all know the harmful effects of lead in children. Those of you who do have children and grandchildren, you'd like to know whether or not the school that they're in or their daycare that they're in is safe. And I think this here resolution encourages our state lawmakers to test schools and daycares throughout our state, not only here in Kenosha County, but throughout our great state. And I encourage everyone to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kubicki. I'm going to clear the board. Does anyone want to speak on Resolution 21? Supervisor Poole?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I toured the Kenosha Water Utility with another group last fall, and they talked extensively about all the testing they do. And then, you know, they say they test the water over 10,000 times a year down there. And they said there's really, you know, very few of the lead pipes around now except for residences. And so I don't think there's really too many of these 2-inch pipes. I don't think there's any, actually, that would go to a school, because even my small church, when we had some changes made there, they made us go to a 6-inch line just for the, you know, the fire suppression systems. And all 6-inch lines are cast iron. They don't make it, and they never made any of those 6-inch. And they wouldn't install those now anyway. So for any public school, I don't think there's any way they would have lead lines anywhere in the area. Now, the other thing is about the daycares. You know, those are located in residences, but the Kenosha Water Utility already goes around to residences in the area and tests for lead and other stuff, you know, at least once a year. And they usually pick the houses that are on the block that have the lead pipes, according to what I heard there. So it sounds like to me, you know, they've got the situation under control, and if people in other areas are worried about it, let them pass some regulation about that. What we need is less burdensome rules and regulations, not more. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Boyd Frederick, you have the floor.
What was brought up in committee is we do not think the Kenosha Water Utility and other utilities are doing a wonderful job. However, there are places that were built before 1941 that still have the 2-inch pipes. What the cost would be minimal compared to the human cost, compared to the lawsuits that could come from this. If we are looking to, you're saying just pass the buck to somebody else, why are we have schools in this community that were built before 1941. Let's take care of the kids that could be affected by lead poisoning. We've already seen the effects in Chicago and in other places. Let's, for a minimal cost, we can ask the legislature to do something. We are not adding them to increase a burden. We're just saying, take a look at the situation. We see it as a concern. Please do something to at least alleviate some of the concerns that may be happening statewide.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think it's important to realize that this is an advisory type motion. It's sent to the state to ask them to take some action. And much of the things we look at in public health are along the lines that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Ask Flint, Michigan. Do you think they wish they might have had some testing in place? We have a good system here in Kenosha, we know that. Does that apply statewide to wells? We don't know. To say what comes from the distribution on the street, on the curb, and then goes into the house are two different things based upon each delivery system. So to just do the bare minimum to do testing, especially when it involves our children, is not too much to ask. I would urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Kubicki, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw. I think the comments made by my fellow colleagues are sufficient because I do want to see the sun set since we missed the sun fall. So I'll stop talking on this topic now. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kubicki. Seeing no other lights. Roll call has been requested. Yes, if you're for the resolution, no if you are against. Motion passes.
Resolution 22 from the Public Works and Facilities and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution requesting to repurpose 2016 capital budget funds from the PSB and KCAB Fire Alarm System Project. Elverman, yes. Grady, yes. O'Day, yes. Gilmore, yes. Wamble, yes. Bostrom, yes. Franco, yes.
I'd move Resolution 23, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. I have a first by Supervisor Elverman and a second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Elverman.
This is a request to repurpose funds within the division that were budgeted for the current budget year. I've been reporting for it probably to the point of boredom for the last few months about this generator in the public safety building. We've had some power outages this year. I believe it's 4 to 5. The generator worked when we went to test it. The next day after one of them, it didn't start. So we have been rebuilding with actual diesel parts from trucks and tractors, and luckily we have good mechanics. This is an obsolete generator. We know that it has to be replaced. The problem is it can't be put into the building where it is now. It will not fit. Current safety standards won't allow it. So the cost that was going to be $175,000 budgeted is $350,000. So they are not asking for more money. We are going to repurpose money from other items that were going to be done this year. One is a generator at the job center that can be put off to 2017. And $107,000 from plumbing modifications in the public safety building, because since this was budgeted, we have been talking about remodeling and redoing the second floor in the public safety building. So any plumbing work that would be done there may be premature. So we're asking to repurpose funds to total the amount to bring us to in the amount of $175,000 to bring us to the $350,000 for the one item that we definitely need, and that's the generator at the public safety building.
Supervisor Elverman, we're on number 22, which is the one for the alarm project.
I just told you good, so we're saving time. I just did 23.
Okay. Excellent.
So pay no attention to that one. But on 22, it's very similar. The courthouse, this is on the fire alarm system projects that we set aside money in the budget again for various projects. And the fire alarm system in the courthouse came in at $220,000 instead of the $180,000. So what we're trying to do here is come up with $40,000 to hit the highest priority we have, postpone the administration buildings, panel work for $15,000. We have savings from the public safety building that gives us the needed $40,000. So I'd ask for your approval on Resolution 22.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. Any lights for number 22? Seeing none, this is a budget modification. Yes, if you're for the resolution, no if you are against.
Supervisor Gable.
Resolution passes. County Clerk.
Resolution 23, from the Public Works and Facility and Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution requesting to repurpose 2016 capital budget funds from the PSB Plumbing Modification Project and KCJC Generator Project to the PSB Generator Project. Elverman, yes. Grady, yes. O'Day, yes. Gilmore, yes. Wamble, yes. Bostrom, yes. Franco, yes.
Supervisor Elverman.
I move Resolution 23.
I have a first by Supervisor Elverman and a second by Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Elverman, did you have anything to add to that?
And I think I've used up all my time. I gave you all the reasons. And again, I mean, this is actually the top priority in the county of facilities is this generator. So it's no extra money in the budget, repurposing, and we need to do the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Elverman. This is a budget modification. If you're in favor, vote yes. No. If you or against? Motion passes.
Communications from Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning Development Extension Education Committee.
Receive and file.
Approval of the June 7th minutes by Supervisor Franco.
Supervisor Franco, you have the floor.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry?
You have the floor to move the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes, the June 7th minutes.
Second.
I have a first by Supervisor Franco, a second by Supervisor Skalinsky. All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are accepted. Motion to adjourn. I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Blau to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.